The Nets come out of the All-Star break and head to the Chicago only to get absolutely embarrassed by the Bulls. It was a very, how many varies are we going to throw in here? Rough outing for Brooklyn in their first game back on a Friday night. Going to take a look at the game. Going to take a look at what's going on with this team. Going to talk about Ben Simmons as well. Going to get into all of it. But first, the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day, even on Fridays where they get absolutely slaughtered. I am Doug Norrie, the owner and operator, DFSR.com. If you want projections, for FanDuel and or DraftKings, NBA bets as well, head on over to DFSR.com. No Adam Armbrecht in the house tonight. He was live with Matt Brooks earlier in the day, so we're chopping up duties here. He got the fun part of this ride, and I get what you would call the scraps on a Friday night where the Nets are completely and utterly embarrassed by the Chicago Bulls. The final score ends up being 131-87, and it somehow felt like even more than that. What a terrible game. Hard to imagine it going any worse for the Nets coming out of the All-Star break. I can't even call it a brutal loss, because a brutal loss is one where you maybe are wondering about the outcome early in the game or even late in the game. This one was simply embarrassing. And there's other words that we could probably use, but we'd end up getting the explicit tag, and we don't want to do that for the podcast feed or over on YouTube. And that ends up being the story of what's going on here. You know, you wait a week for the teams to come back. You get excited for how things are going to shake out. You try, you get your hopes up for maybe what the last 24 games of this season could look like for Brooklyn. And what you end up getting is an absolute and utter no-show performance by the Nets on both ends of the court. Completely destroyed on defense. I mean, an embarrassing output on offense. And the story of the game is that it just was over before it even really got started. There's a bunch of problems here. It ends up being one game, and one game on the ledger is not where you kind of make all of your judgments around a team. Obviously, we had reason to get excited about this squad before that we got into the All-Star break. So I don't think we're not gonna do a full Chicken Little sky is falling off of this one single game. And at the same time, and I was looking up partway through this game what the fewest amount of points ever scored in an NBA game was, because that's how dire it was looking for Brooklyn. They had 29 points at halftime. 29. They scored 18 points in the first quarter. They scored 11 in the second quarter. The game was completely over by then, but 29 points in an NBA game at a halftime is like a number that you just never see. You could watch basketball, and we watch basketball every single night here. You can watch basketball for entire seasons and not see this level of futility in terms of overall output from a team. They couldn't make a single shot. Everything looked terrible. The looks were bad. Even the good looks couldn't go down. I mean, really, to score that few points in a quarter, 11 points in a quarter, you really have to be in everything going wrong territory. And then as the game goes on, that kind of thing just ends up spiraling, right? Like, it's already over. The energy is already super low. You're not going to, every rational person that has half a brain knows that the game is completely over, and it's just hard to probably muster any kind of comeback after that. And if you're on the other side of it with the Bulls, you're playing so downhill that you're kind of just having fun with it. There was a point midway through the second quarter where Andre Drummond stole the ball, went full court and slammed, flushed it home. And I mean, I called it at the time. I was like, well, this is over. If this is happening in the game, if these are the kind of things that are going to happen in this game, then we pretty much can call it here, live to see another day, and we'll figure all the rest of it out later. Because this game, it was so off the rails that, one, it's very difficult to make judgments on it from a X's and O's standpoint, but maybe we can figure out what's going on here from a team standpoint, because teams really shouldn't lose games like this. Professional teams that have good players like the Nets have, do they have superstars? No. Okay, we already understand that. They send Kevin Durant off of the trade deadline. They send Kyrie off of the trade deadline. They don't have the superstars anymore. Do they have a bunch of like professional above average role players on this team? Absolutely. Absolutely. Should their defense be good enough on a night to night basis to overcome sort of stalls in the offense that we could probably foresee coming? Absolutely. They have the kind of personnel that should be able to stave off games and blowouts, even when they are having trouble dialing it up on the offensive end. So while on an X's and O's standpoint, we're not going to sit here and break down the Spencer Dinwiddie, Mikal Bridges 2-man game or things that went wrong with the pick and dives and stuff like that, or where they, screwed up some switches or had too many seals for Vooch off of screens and switches. Yeah, like we could talk a little bit about that. It's not going to matter so much, but on a high level, like what does it say about your team? I mean, yes. Was there a break? For sure. All-star break, you're going to have some rust. Who knows, what's going on during these layoffs. There were other blowouts in the NBA tonight. Like this wasn't the only blowout game in town. Milwaukee smoked the Heat. Atlanta smoked Cleveland. Like, okay, it happens. I get it. I was going to say Chicago smoked Brooklyn. But when you allow yourself to get down this much and to have it look just this train wrecky on offense and on defense, there is a sort of a head scratching moment about sort of like what is happening here for the team and like what the future prospects of the team are. And to some degree, this game highlighted problems that we already kind of knew that the Nets might encounter. Offense is going to be a struggle at times. Now, are the Bulls anything like an elite defense? Of course not. They started Patrick Beverley, so they have a little more point of attack defense, even though he's buyout territory, buyout season. They did get Alex Caruso here, and he's starting. We know his defense is elite, but the rest of these guys in Levine, DeRozan, and Vooch, this is not a group that you shouldn't be able to take some advantage of. So we already know that the offense for the Nets at times is going to struggle and stall. That's just kind of the personnel that they have. You hope that the defense will be able to keep you in games just because they have elite defenders. It's hard you can't really run cold on defense. Like other teams can run hot with shooting, but if you have the right scheme and personnel, you should be able to just keep yourself in games. But the Nets weren't able to do that either. And sometimes these things, one begets the other, right? Like your offense isn't going and it's hard to dial it up on D. I get there's a mental and emotional aspect of games like this as well, that once it starts going bad and that ball starts rolling downhill, like that, that crappy snowball starts to gain steam, it is hard to stop it on the other end of the court because you can just see the game slipping away. You know that it's going to be a problem. You're getting blown out. And there's going to be other slippages just in terms of your overall game. And I think that's what we got here with the Nets. But these games aren't supposed to happen. Okay. You can't score 11 points in a quarter. Like, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter who you're playing or even who you're throwing out there. 11 points in a quarter is such an embarrassment. 29 points and a half is such an embarrassment. The only reason the final score gets them to 87, which isn't even respectable, is because they bench unit it, because the Nets like have too good of a bench kind of, and the Bulls just said, we're not playing these starters anymore. And they're throwing in their bench unit, and the Nets were kind of able to make up some points in the end because they went into the fourth quarter of this game with 51 points. 51. It's unbelievable. Lots more to talk about. We're going to get into Ben Simmons. We're going to talk a little bit more about this game, such as it were, where the Nets are landing in the standings, what to kind of look for going into Sunday's game against the Hawks. We'll do that in a second. But first, Nissan's Most Electric Player of the Week is brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. Now, look, I know what you're saying to yourself. Electric Player of the Week, how are we going to have that following this game? I'm still throwing Mikal Bridges in there. One, I'm still riding high off the 45 points against Miami before they went into the All-Star break. Two, I believe in this guy long-term, so I know that this kind of thing is going to improve. 13 points tonight, it's okay. We average it together with a 45, and we get 58 total points. That's 29 points a game. That's electric. It's energizing. It's elegant. We still know this guy's powerful, elegantly powerful. He's going to deliver in the long term. That's why it's going to be He's going to be one of the perfect solutions for the Nets going forward, even if this game was not the one you wanted to see. The 2023 Nissan Ariya packs pin to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. All right, some other just final kind of numbers to throw out there for just how this game went and sort of telling the story in sort of kind of a hilarious way for like what the futility the Nets showed tonight. Spencer Dinwiddie a minus 31, Mikal Bridges a minus 33. The Nets at one point, now it kind of made up in this fourth quarter because they were just able to score some points. But at one point in this game, I think it was like, I tweeted it out. So I'm going to say it was like somewhere early in the fourth quarter. They had 17 field goals made, the Nets. They had 18 total fouls, and they had 12 turnovers. I mean, those numbers are very, very difficult to come by. I mean, those would be like the numbers that your kid would have against you when they're 8 years old and you're playing against them like in the driveway or something like that, like you and your friends against your 8-year-old kid and their friends, because they'd be fouling all the time and barely able to score and just turning all over the time. That not what you should see in the in an absolute well, never what you should see in an NBA game. The points in the paint, for those of you that have done the Nets need a center bandwagon, which look, I get, and I would like to see some kind of solution here, especially after Claxton. The Bulls had 62 points in the paint. The Nets had 22 points in the paint. If you only counted the points in the paint for this game, the Nets would have won 87-62. But again, this is like not what you want to see. 25 fouls to 15 for the Nets. Obviously, they lost the turnover game as well, 14-11. But they just got absolutely destroyed. Now, sometimes points in the paint stuff is an effort-based thing. Sometimes it's personnel. Like we know that at least the Bulls do trend bigger with guys like Vooch and Drummond, who are there essentially, even in non-blowouts, going to run out there for just about 48 true center minutes. And those are always going to be a little bit of a problem for the Nets, just even on their best days, just because their overall size has a difficult time contending with just bigger bodies. And these guys are bigger bodies. Like I said at the beginning, they were fine sealing Vooch off as much as possible. Drummond he had his eyes as big as saucers, knowing that he was going to be able to absolutely eat in the minutes that he was on the court, just because the Nets were just undersized just throughout the game. Like Claxton had to leave the game with an injury. We did get some Day'Ron Sharpe for 16 minutes, but these guys really weren't able to put up much of a fight. Drummond had 13 and 10 in just 14 minutes in this game. So that's about as good as you can do per minute, and it just kind of told the story of the rest of the game. Like the Nets can, even on quasi stops that they got, and they didn't get many, the second chance points for the Bulls were easy to come by as well. And it's the kind of stuff that's going to end up happening when you allow a team to score 131 points. Like if the team scores 131 points, kind of everything was going to go right for them. The Bulls shot 46% from three. Like I said, they destroyed them in the inside, crushed them in the rebounding game, 57-31. It was all, this is just the whole thing. Like we can break down. There's only so many ways to slice and dice these numbers up. When you lose by this many, like, what are you going to do? Dive all the way into the analytics of the game? The Nets got killed. They got killed in every single phase of the game. That's just what it is. Do we need to worry about the team long-term? We always knew that this team was not championship bound. We always knew, I'm seeing this current iteration of the team. Like, we had championship pedigree a little while ago. That's gone now, obviously, with trading Kevin Durant and trading Kyrie Irving. We know that this current iteration of the team is not headed for the championship. So it's all kind of about expectations for your team. Are you among the net fan that wants to just see them fight hard every night? That's why I tune in. I tune in on a Friday evening when there are definitely other things in the world to do, to see teams fight hard and play hard and give it all they have and try to figure out if there's going to be, what pieces we want to move forward with and which pieces kind of fit and work well together. This game, you're going to struggle with that part of it when you get blown out this bad. Maybe you're of the mind that, like, hey, we just got an extension here for Jacques Vaughn. He's going to be here for multiple seasons. It is a concern to you that a team, you would come out of an all-star break this flat and this able to just be completely waxed, that's a little bit of a concern. I mean, I think we have enough sample. We definitely have enough sample size with Jacques Vaughn here. I still think that has been the right move. There's going to be only so many moves he can make with the personnel because, again, they don't have a superstar in the lineup. But when we were looking at the 24 games left on the schedule for the Nets and kind of thinking to ourselves, hey, where are they going to land? Right? Where are they going to land in terms of the playoffs? Where are they going to land in terms of seeding? Are we going to be able to stay out of the play-in game? Are these going to be the sort of scenarios maybe lining up? I even looked at it before this game. I was like, if they pull this one off against the Bulls, maybe there's like a world where they sneak into the 4 seed. I mean, they're still like they were 4 games back of Cleveland before the game. I mean, that feels like an absolute pipe dream. I actually feel crazy for even thinking it at the time, but I definitely looked at it. I was like, they win this one, Cleveland loses, maybe the Nets are able to kind of scrape and claw and just kind of stay strong enough to do it. This kind of game does demoralize you along those lines. Just because, like, again, they got just trounced so badly. Maybe they come back against Atlanta on the road here on Sunday afternoon game, 3 p.m. Eastern, and they turn it back around and you kind of forget about that. And sports sometimes has the way of doing that, right? Like you can kind of, your sports for a lot of the time is, what have you done for me lately, right? Those are things that are more front of mind, are going to be the things that kind of stick in your mind's eye a little bit more, just because that's the thing you just saw. So when you see a team get, killed, it's going to be hard to imagine this team make the playoffs. Like, how could that even possible? Like, beat Atlanta? How could we even do that? And those things tend to just, regression comes for us all, good and bad. And those things tend to just kind of work themselves out in the long term. But it is just such a massive bummer, to wait a week, get yourself pumped up for the game, think you're going to just see a game that definitely against this Bulls team, like, yeah, Levine, DeRozan, okay, winnable for sure. Like, we saw this team beat the Heat. Yeah, they didn't have Tyler Hero, but these guys should be able to hang with most teams in the NBA. And to get it to be over before it started, it ends up being a bummer. And like I said, it maybe just kind of resets or just kind of reconfigures what you think the goals are for this team going forward, which might be, hey, going to have to scrap and claw to stay out of the play-in game. And that's just going to be what the story of this season ends up being. And that's what happens when you get blown out. That's what happens when you allow another team to score 131 points and you score 87 points. Want to get into Ben Simmons here in a second. We'll take some live YouTube stuff over as well. If you're listening on the podcast feed, just reminder, we're over on YouTube, live on YouTube multiple times a week. And this podcast will continue on after the regular podcast feed, because we'll do some stuff on YouTube. So we'll do that as well. We're going to get into that all in a second. But if you're looking for a delicious treat, you don't want all the fat and calories, you have to try Built Bar. Look, I'm past the New Year's phase or New Year's resolution phase of this, and just in the, hey, got to get healthy, got to be eating right, making sure I'm choosing the right snacks. Built Bar checks all the boxes where that's concerned. They started with the flavors, so you can get like peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and the list of flavors they have is too long. It's going to sound like candy bar flavors, but they're actual protein bars that are actually healthy for you. 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. You don't need to wait around for a box either. You can go to Walmart and Sam's Club to grab them, or you can go to built.com. Maybe you want a 13-bar box with the flavors like brownie batter or churro. Thank me later for those. Like I said, pick them up wherever you're doing your food shopping, Walmart or Sam's, or go to built.com. All right, let's close this thing out on the podcast at least and talk a little Ben Simmons. Word comes out from the Nets before the game that Simmons was going to miss. He is going to end up having his knee drained and have a platelet rich PRP. I'll get the exact things. I just had it in front of me and closed it out while I was doing it. Yeah, PRP injection. He had it before the All-Star break. Drained. There was fluid buildup in the knee. And he called the injury, quote, frustrating. And then he said that he hadn't been 100. He has not been at 100% at any point this season, which I think we pretty much knew. It's a disappointing setback for Simmons, who I think we all thought, maybe we would see after an extended rest come out of the All-Star break. We've talked about him extensively, about what the Nets kind of need to see from him in the short and the long term to have this team sort of reach other levels. They have to have Simmons be good. It's just kind of how the math works out with him at this point. He is going to miss a couple of games at least. They did say, the Nets did, that they have not considered shutting him down for the season. Although I will say that was the first thought I had, was I wonder if this is the last we see of Simmons. There's no word that it is. And so we have to trust that that's the word. We have to trust that that's what it is, right? Like, that's from the medical staff. That's from Jacques Vaughn. That's from the people up at the top, that they're not considering shutting him down. The problem you have with it as a Nets fan is that we are not even a year removed from a situation that feels eerily similar, which was Simmons is having, health issues, back and knee and all this other stuff. And you think he's going to come back, and they shut him down, and he never played for the Nets last season. Now, he got the microdiscectomy. With the back surgery in the offseason. We know that's a long process. Like, we know the recovery time for that is a year, right? To like get back to full health. And so there was the expectation, really probably should have and still is, that he's still along that health timeline, right? Like, that he's not out of the woods yet. I mean, clearly isn't. If he's getting his knee drained and receiving a platelet injection, then obviously everything's not okay. And we also knew that everything wasn't going to be okay from a recovery standpoint right away, because he had surgery and these kind of things take time. I do get concerned that this kind of thing has been recurring the whole season with just different back and knee stuff. He said it himself that he has not felt right all season. He's clearly not right now. They have given at least a 2-game timeline on if and when he's going to return. And at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if he played very little for the rest of the season. And look, that's like not even a crazy take. There's not that many games left in the season, right? They only have now at this point 23 games. He's going to miss at least 2 more of them. So that takes us down to 21 games remaining, in what would be considered the best case scenario around this right now. So like, it's not crazy to think that he barely plays for the rest of the season. And, wherever they land with play-in tournament or actually just getting into the playoffs, like, we'll see what happens there too. But with the way this season has gone for Simmons, knowing what the surgery was during the offseason, knowing that there's been no real huge extended stretch where he's been completely healthy. He said it himself that he's not been right all season. Okay. That's just from him. That's not even, me trying to figure this stuff out or reading tea leaves. He said it himself. With all that being said, it does call into question about like what the goals are here, right? Now, the Nets have said they need him for the playoffs and he's an important piece of the team. That's clearly correct. Like, they do need him. The Nets aren't winning the championship this year. So you wonder like how much you need him. Is a juice worth the squeeze, knowing that there's multiple years left on the contract and knowing that this injury thing over the course of so far, the months that we've been in the season, has not come close to working itself out. Like, what is the overall point in continuing to run him out there if he's not 100%? It's not getting better. He needs recovery time. It's not really looked right all season either, just from doesn't pass the eye test at all. So from those standpoints, like, I do wonder a little bit like what we're even doing here with this situation. I'm stumbling because it's a little confusing and kind of it's not confusing at the same time. Like, is it crazy to just think that maybe just shutting him down for the rest of the season and giving him another long extended ability to or just timeline to rehab and get completely right with everything he needs to do? Is that crazy to do now? I don't know. The narrative around him is already in the toilet, so it's not like he's going to take some huge PR hit. He's kind of not, it's not really a story so much anymore around him. Like, most people have come up with their own judgments around where he is as a player. So like, I don't know if the Nets really lose anything by just waving the white flag for this season, saying, hey, this would line up better with the timeline around the back and the surgery from the offseason, and let's just call it, and we'll see you next season. I don't know if I'd be against that, because I just don't know what the upside of continuing to try to press this is to this season, except for optics. And if the optics are just to have him on the court, I mean, it hasn't looked great. And I just don't know why you would keep pressing it. So this is a weird situation. I'm sure we're going to get more details around it over the next couple of days. I do not expect this thing to just kind of clear itself away and then he's fully healthy. Nothing about anything that's happened with Simmons so far this season or what we know about the procedures that he's had would suggest that's going to be the case. And with that in mind, I would say I might vote to say, hey, let's just call it and see you next season. You're under contract for two more years. Let's get healthy. The team's not winning it all this year. We kind of know what the path is, and that's just what it is. So I don't know where they're going to land. I'm sure we're going to get more information. Net stuff with the injuries is always totally hit or miss with the information. So it's hard to even trust all the timelines all the time, but that is just where we are with Simmons. Tough loss against the Bulls. Well, tough would describe a game that was close. Embarrassing loss to the Bulls here on Friday night, 131-287. Appreciate that's everyone that's jumped in here over on YouTube. If you have a question, we'll stick around here for a few minutes, answering some questions, chopping it up over on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast feed, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets over on YouTube, going live after games, going live during the day, like Adam did with Matt Brooks. Make sure you go back and listen to that podcast. Matt Brooks, obviously one of the best in the business. So you make sure you can go listen to that. That's on the YouTube feed. Go check that out. Get to this point in the podcast where I always forget to dial up a quote from one of the all-time great poets. That's one Mr. Adam Armbrecht in charge of that one. So I will just say we will be back later on in YouTube in about 2 seconds. And next week, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball. All right, live on YouTube. Appreciate everyone that has been in here. Seeing the comments just going fast and furious. When you're rolling solo on YouTube, it's hard to keep up with everyone's questions. So if you had a question and you threw it in there while I was pontificating around this Nets disaster loss, try to throw it back in, and I will try to get to a few of these. Here, Adam Armbrecht, can't believe the Locked On Nets co-host didn't show up. That's what I said. I texted Adam passive-aggressively during the game and was like, hey, I'm going to go on YouTube. I think I'm going to do it live. And that was like the invitation for him to jump in and say, oh, I'll join in with you, buddy, because I know it's going to be a tough one. Nothing. He's here now in the comment section, but he's not available anywhere else. But that's okay. He did the fun part when he interviewed him and talked with Matt Brooks. So make sure you go listen to that. And Adam didn't pick up on the signs that I wanted him to jump into this thing. I'm just kidding, buddy. I knew I was doing this live. Let's see what other questions we have going here. Well, they already did fire Nash, so that's good news. So you already got the first thing of this one. It says fire Nash, trade Simmons, get Boogie Cousins. Great news. Already fired Nash, so no worries there. Trade Simmons. Is untradeable right now. 2 years left in this contract. Maybe get to the buyouts get to the expiring season and get it. And no, I don't think Boogie Cousins would do anything to help this team in their current construction. So I'm going to go 0 for 3 on that one. There's another question because I'm seeing this come up a lot. Is there a way to buy out Simmons and get him off the team? There is not, because a buyout implies that you will pay the person the buyouts only happen when the two sides can agree on a number that the player will take to be let out of the contract, right? Like you can't just, okay. So like, let's say the Nets are like, hey, we'll buy you out. We'll pay you $20 million to leave. Simmons, it's just be a clear no, because the players union probably wouldn't even allow it, but two, they can't allow it or not allow it, but like they would completely frown on this happening because they don't want this to happen because it's bad for money business to not get paid your full amount. And two, Simmons has absolute locked up reasoning with this. You say, I'll maybe let you buy my contract out after the season for $78 million, which is the exact number the Nets owe him. He's not going to accept a buyout. That just doesn't happen. Buyouts really only happen with veterans nearing the end of their career. They've made a ton of money. They don't need the money anymore, and they want to go to contenders, right? Like that is just basically what happens with these teams. Or they are told, so I'll go through a couple buyout situations. They're told by the team, you're not going to have a role going forward, and you're just not going to, like, we don't need you. You're not going to play. So what do you want to do here? Like that would be, I would call that like the Kevin Love situation, right? Like Kevin Love, they finally buy him out at the end of the contract. They're like, you're not going to play at all. It was a little confusing why they did that. I think they're maybe just doing right by him, but whatever, because he started for the Heat tonight. But that's that situation. Like Terrence Ross gets bought out. He's probably going to sign with the Suns, right? Like Patrick Beverly gets bought out. He goes plays with the Bulls. That's just because they kind of just want to allow him to play. Like the guys that get bought out, or think about other guys like Blake Griffin, who came to the Nets. The guys that made tons of money and they want to go play somewhere else. I don't think Simmons is in that range. It's looks bad to get bought out of your contract, like because it means the other team didn't want you. I think veterans can kind of hold tight on their career with this kind of thing. But I don't think Simmons is in that category. So I think we're going to hear that a lot over the next 2 years, by the way. That's why I want to I wanted to bring that up there. Not trying to just dump on it, but I do think that I think this is going to be a question. We've already heard this multiple times, right? Like we've already heard multiple times that the buyout option. It's not an option. All right, let me roll through a couple more of these. Like I said, if you have a question up here, throw it in at Locked On Nets. Sorry, I'm just going to pause here. Here we go. Okay, do you like Dinwiddie as a starting point guard for this team going forward, or do you need a point guard that can penetrate and bring Dinwiddie off the bench? I mean, you clearly, if you want to be a really good team, you need someone better than Spencer Dinwiddie. He's a good player. He's not like an all-star level point guard, obviously, not an all the NBA guy. I think this is not, news to anybody. But in terms of like, would they need an upgrade eventually? Yeah, like Dinwiddie is a nice guy to have if you are, like if you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on your team and you want a sixth guy off the bench, or you can probably play him next to a guy like Kyrie because those other guys are so dynamic. I think Dinwiddie is a good option like that. When he's lead ball handler and when he has to be sort of the offensive hub, it's going to look like what it looks like now, which is gets bogged down. He's not dynamic enough. Like he just can't, he can't take enough guys off the dribble. He can get to the rack against the right defenders, but not consistently enough. Like he doesn't have a mid-range game, not like you need one, but it would be nice in this team to have it a little bit. He's not a huge on-ball distributor. So like, I don't know. I think they clearly need to upgrade this position. I don't think at any point they saw him as like the point guard of the future or anything with the Kyrie trade. I think the timing of that probably thought as hey, these are like kind of win nowish kind of guys with him and Dorian Finney-Smith plus the picks, and maybe Durant sticks around, and then that didn't happen. So no, I don't think he's not going to be here long term. He has a non-guaranteed money for next season. I'm not exactly sure how much is guaranteed. It's $21 million overall, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with that contract next year. And because I don't know how much is guaranteed, but I doubt I don't think he's on this team long term, right? I don't think he's on past next season or something like that. And he's not on the right timeline. He's probably not exactly what they need. So that's kind of where I stand with Dinwiddie. I am surprised. I saw this. I was actually surprised Sumner didn't play a little bit at all. He didn't play at all in this game. Sorry. I was going to say a little bit more. Yeah, he and Mills didn't even get off the bench. That was a little confusing to me just because they were getting dumpstered so hard that I thought we would have seen at least Sumner in there, but maybe wonder if there was like some kind of injury situation with him. Didn't read this whole one, but we're going to do it on the fly. I don't advocate tanking, but what would be the best case scenario for our own 2023 pick? Should we significantly lose the majority of our remaining games? Okay, so the good news is they have their pick for this year. There's no way almost no scenario where it's going to swap with the Rockets, who are totally terrible. So this is a pick swap season, and they are unlikely, based on the odds right now, to swap with Houston, who is, obviously completely almost historically atrocious at 13-45. They've won too many games, and so I would probably just say it's not worth it to tank. They kind of don't have the right guys to tank. To remember, and we talked about this on a previous podcast, but so this is going to be repeating it a little bit. But to tank, you really need young, terrible players, right? That's the only way to really tank. And the teams that you see really go hard at this will play young guys that are kind of clueless on defense, or they're just kind of chuckers and they're just looking to put up shots. And as a young team who wants to lose, you kind of live with that because you know that the modus operandi for a season is not to win. The Nets like don't have those guys. So like they're all kind of a little too good. Now I know this game doesn't really bring that out, but they are probably just too good. Like actually the fourth quarter of this game is a good example, right? Like the game was over, and because the way they're constructed, they're just playing like Seth Curry and Cam Thomas, right? And Joe Harris and Royce O'Neal in a game where they're getting killed because they can't, they're like, they don't have other guys to go in and just be bad, right? Like what you need to be really super, when you need to really kind of embrace the tank, you need to have a roster that's like what the Rockets are now, which is, oh, who's on your bench? It's like Deshaun Nix and Josh Christopher, right? Like these are the guys. Frank Kaminsky's over there. Like they're starting Ty Washington in this game, right? Like this is a kind of team that is fine with losing. They're a total dumpster fire and they're fine with it. Like the Nets don't have those guys, right? They just have too many professionals, and I just don't even think it would. I mean, I guess to give themselves like enough of a chance at a high draft pick, I don't know. I don't think they can do it. So I don't think they have the bad enough pieces to tank is my long-winded answer to that. Look, they might just do it anyway to keep playing like they did tonight. They will tank, right? Like they lose every game. They score 87 points every game. They're just going to lose every single game. So that's going to be the case. Maybe that's just what happens anyway. I don't think that'll be the case just because I think that you're not going to see huge repeat performances like this one. But that's kind of where I stand. We've wondered about this with starting Cam Thomas. I still just think there's like something that Jacque Vaughn doesn't like about Cam Thomas. Like I'm not exactly sure what. He's been not critical of him outright, but not praiseworthy of him either. He's made a lot of side comments about sort of just like, I think like not off the court stuff, like bad stuff, but maybe attitude or just like demeanor or whatever it is. I don't think Cam is going to start over any like the veteran kind of guys that they have now. Like, I don't think he's just going to supplant Dinwiddie in the starting lineup. I don't think he's going to get started in front of Cam Johnson, who I think they want to keep long term. He's definitely not going to like start over Mikal. Maybe Dorian Finney-Smith because you want to get another guy. I just don't think they're going to do that either. I think if anything, they would just go back to Royce O'Neal in that spot. So I just don't see it happening. And I just think that there's been enough little things that have happened with the way Vaughn's talked about this over the course of the season that just doesn't seem like whatever it is, right? Like attitude or work ethic. I'm just making these things up because like, I get it. Like we've watched Cam and we've seen him be able to score in bunches. There just doesn't seem like the Nets, the way they talk about this situation just doesn't seem like a team that's like so in love with the Cam Thomas experience. So I'm not exactly sure what it is. Look, everyone's seen interviews where he's given, and there's been like some surliness at times, I suppose. And I don't know if that like carries over to other things. But there's just something there that is just not like totally correct. Like he doesn't take instruction maybe in the way that Vaughn wants them to, or he doesn't run the sets. He took some real bad shots tonight, which I'm sure like if you're already don't love what's happening, probably piss you off a little bit. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think with this current roster, like you're going to see him go in and start starting over some of these guys. Could be wrong about that, but I just don't think we've heard enough. I just don't think we've heard enough like positive stuff. Even when he went through that crazy 40-point scoring streak, it's just like, I don't know. There's just something else going on here, but I'm just not exactly sure what it is. All right. I see a bunch of other people in here. I'm going to scroll up real fast to see if any other questions jump out. See a Brandon Miller question. I'm not going to talk about that one, I don't think, right now. Even though I just mentioned it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Okay. I'm going to jump out of here. Appreciate everyone that jumped in, even after a totally terrible loss by the Nets to the Bulls tonight. Look, Nets Nation still wants to get in here and mix it up, talk about the team. I totally get it. I like it too. Look, it's fun to jump on here and talk hoops, even in games where you get completely destroyed. That is just the nature of hoops. They are going to play 3 p.m. on Sunday against the Hawks. I think we'll probably be coming later in the evening on that one for just the post game, but we will do a post game podcast sometime in the evening following the Hawks game. Appreciate everyone that jumped into YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're still over there on YouTube and haven't done it yet. Much appreciated, everyone that jumped in here. We'll be back again on Sunday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.